Ramadan is a hug for the soul that almost gave up. Many people approach Ramadan as a mountain they must climb, a checklist they must perfect, a version of themselves they must suddenly become. They brace themselves for it, preparing mentally for discipline, endurance, and control, as though the month is standing at a distance, arms crossed, waiting to measure who is worthy of it. But for the exhausted heart, Ramadan does not arrive like a command shouted from above. It arrives like a door quietly opening at the end of a long road. It arrives like someone saying without words, "You can come in now. You do not have to explain how you survived. You do not have to justify how you fell behind. Just come." Because some souls are not tired from laziness or neglect. They are tired from trying, from holding on longer than anyone noticed, like from showing up while empty, from believing, hoping, waiting, and adjusting again and again, without relief arriving when it was needed most. And when that kind of tiredness settles into the heart, what the soul needs is not pressure, it needs safety. Allah does not welcome His servants the way people do. People welcome you when you look put together, when you have stories of success, when you can explain where you have been and why it was reasonable. They want timelines, they want clarity, they want assurance that you are not too broken to be around. Allah welcomes you while you are still shaking from the journey. He welcomes you while your voice is unsure and your intentions feel fragile. He welcomes you before you have the energy to fix anything. This is why Ramadan feels different for the tired soul. It is not asking for brilliance, it is not demanding performance, it is creating space where the heart can breathe again, space where the soul can remember itself without panic, space where even silence can become worship. There are people who enter Ramadan already feeling behind, already carrying guilt for what they think they should have been by now, already afraid that this month will expose how weak they feel inside. But Ramadan does not expose weakness to shame it. It softens weakness so it can finally rest. It lowers the noise of the world just enough for you to hear what your soul has been whispering for a long time. And often, that whisper is not a cry for more discipline, it is a plea for mercy. When a soul almost gives up, it is rarely because it stopped believing. It is because it believed for too long without relief, where it hoped without seeing change. It prayed without knowing how to hold the waiting anymore. And Ramadan arrives not to interrogate that pain, but to sit beside it quietly, like someone who understands that explanations are not always necessary. This month is gentle in ways people don't always notice at first. It rearranges your day. It shifts your attention. It removes constant consumption and replaces it with intentional pauses. Hunger slows you. Thirst humbles you. Night prayer stretches time until it feels wide enough to hold your thoughts. None of this is meant to drain you. It is meant to bring you back into yourself. Ramadan is not interested in how impressive your worship looks. It is interested in whether your heart finally feels safe enough to soften. Because a heart that has been in survival mode for too long cannot immediately become productive in the spiritual sense. It needs to uncoil. It needs reassurance. It needs to be reminded that it is not loved conditionally. And this is where the hug exists, not in grand gestures, not in dramatic transformation stories, but in the way Allah allows you to arrive tired and still calls you close. In the way He does not rush you, in the way the doors of mercy are open before you even decide what you are capable of offering. For the soul that almost gave up, Ramadan does not feel like striving upward. It feels like being lowered gently onto solid ground after floating in exhaustion for too long. It feels like being told that your exhaustion is seen, that your effort mattered even when the outcome disappointed you, that your delays did not disqualify you. You begin to realize that Allah never measured your worth by your pace. Some days in Ramadan, your worship will be quiet. You may sit longer than you stand. You may think more than you speak. You may cry without knowing exactly why. And none of this is failure. This is healing unfolding without spectacle. The tired soul does not need to be pushed. It needs to be held long enough for its breathing to change. Ramadan holds you through rhythm rather than demand, through consistency rather than pressure, through repetition that is comforting, not suffocating. The same fast, the same sunset, the same call to prayer, day after day, like reassurance that stability still exists even when your inner world feels uncertain, and slowly, without announcement, the heart begins to trust again. Not necessarily in outcomes, not necessarily in people, but in Allah's nearness. You realize that even when your energy is low, Allah is not distant. Even when your focus slips, He is not offended. Even when your dua feels incomplete, He understands what your tongue cannot finish. This is the intimacy Ramadan restores, not one built on achievement, but one built on allowance. Allowance to be human, allowance to be slow, allowance to be tender. This month does not ask you to erase your pain. It asks you to bring it closer to the one who already knows it. And there is a difference between those two things. One is exhausting, the other is relief. For someone who almost gave up, Ramadan does not reopen wounds harshly. It gives them air. It allows you to revisit what hurt you while being held by mercy, not judgment. It teaches you that your brokenness is not an obstacle to closeness. Sometimes it is the doorway. You are not required to come into Ramadan strong. You are not expected to arrive inspired. You are not obligated to feel ready. Readiness is not the condition for entry. Willingness is enough. And even willingness can be quiet. Sometimes it looks like simply showing up to the day. Sometimes it looks like fasting while tired. Sometimes it looks like whispering a prayer that has no structure, no eloquence, only truth. And Allah accepts truth in every form it comes in. This is why Ramadan feels like a hug rather than a test for the soul that almost gave up. Because it does not amplify your fears. It dissolves them slowly. It does not shout instructions. It offers companionship. It does not demand that you be more. Rather, it reminds you that you were never abandoned when you felt less. And as the days move forward, you may notice that the weight you were carrying begins to shift. Not disappear entirely, but to rest differently. You carry it with more patience, with more softness toward yourself, with more trust that you are not doing this alone. That is not coincidence. That is mercy settling where exhaustion once lived. And this is only the beginning of what this month offers when you allow it to hold you instead of bracing against it. As the days of Ramadan continue to unfold, something subtle begins to happen inside the soul that almost gave up. It is not dramatic and it is not sudden. There is no loud announcement of healing, no clear moment where you can say, "This is where everything changed." Instead, there is a quiet loosening, a softening around the places that once felt locked tight, a gentler way of carrying what still hurts. You may notice that you no longer brace yourself as much. The constant tension you lived with, the feeling that you were always about to fail at something important, begins to ease. Not because your problems have vanished, but because your heart is no longer carrying them alone. Ramadan has a way of reminding the soul that it was never designed to survive by force. It was designed to survive through connection. This is why the nights feel different. The world slows down, and for once you are not being chased by expectations. You are not being measured by productivity or output. You are simply present, standing, sitting, or lying down, aware that Allah is near in a way that feels personal, not distant or formal. Near in a way that does not demand explanations. For the soul that almost gave up, this nearness feels unfamiliar at first. It can even feel undeserved. You might find yourself thinking about the time you wasted, the prayers you delayed, the promises you made and struggled to keep. You might wonder how Allah can still receive you so gently after all of that. But Ramadan does not respond to those thoughts with argument. It responds with consistency. Every sunset arrives whether you feel worthy or not. Every opportunity for mercy remains open whether you feel ready or not. Every moment of return is accepted whether it is graceful or clumsy. And slowly, the soul begins to understand something it may have forgotten. Allah's mercy is not a reward for perfection, it is a refuge for imperfection. The tired soul often believes that closeness to Allah must be earned through visible improvement, but Ramadan teaches a quieter truth. Sometimes closeness begins when you stop pretending to be strong and allow yourself to be seen as you are. Weak, unsure, hopeful, exhausted, still trying. And Allah does not turn away from that honesty. You begin to feel that your relationship with Allah is not fragile in the way you feared. It does not shatter because of one missed intention or one distracted moment. It does not collapse because your heart wavers. It is held together by something far more stable than your consistency. It is held together by His. This is when the hug tightens, not in pressure but in reassurance. You may find that you start speaking to Allah differently, not with rehearsed words but with sincerity. Not asking for everything to be fixed immediately, but asking for the strength to stay present. Asking for ease in your chest. Asking for lightness where heaviness once lived. These prayers may feel simple, but they are profound. They are the prayers of someone who no longer feels the need to perform, and Allah listens to those prayers with a special closeness. Ramadan reshapes your understanding of success. It stops being about how much you do and becomes about how deeply you are willing to return. It stops being about comparison and becomes about connection. It stops being about proving and becomes about trusting. For the soul that almost gave up, trust is not rebuilt through grand gestures. It is rebuilt through small, repeated moments of safety. A prayer that feels calm instead of rushed. A fast that feels purposeful instead of punishing. A night where sleep comes without the usual heaviness pressing on your chest. These moments stack quietly. They do not announce themselves, but they change you. You begin to realize that Allah has been guiding you gently this entire time, even through your exhaustion, even through your confusion, even through the days you thought you were failing. Ramadan does not introduce a new Allah to you. It reveals the one who has always been there, waiting patiently for you to feel safe enough to notice. And there is something deeply healing about realizing that you were never a disappointment. You were a servant who was tired. The soul that almost gave up often carries shame alongside exhaustion. Shame for needing rest. Shame for slowing down. But shame for not being who they thought they should be by now. Ramadan does not feed that shame. It dissolves it slowly, replacing it with compassion. Not the kind of compassion that excuses neglect, but the kind that understands limits. Allah knows the weight you have been carrying. He knows the internal battles that never made it into words. He knows the prayers you swallowed because you were too tired to speak them. And He does not shame you for any of it. Instead, He invites you closer. As Ramadan moves toward its later days, you may notice that your heart feels steadier, not lighter in a careless way, but steadier in a grounded way. You may still have questions, you may still have fears, but they no longer feel like they are swallowing you whole. They sit beside you instead of on top of you. This is the gift of being held. The hug of Ramadan is not meant to end abruptly when the month ends. It is meant to teach your soul what safety feels like, so you can recognize it again later. It teaches you that returning does not require dramatic repentance every time. Sometimes it simply requires honesty, sometimes it requires rest, sometimes it requires trusting that Allah's door was never closed in the first place. For the soul that almost gave up, Ramadan is proof that you were not forgotten during your weakest moments. You were being carried through them in ways you could not see at the time. And now you are being invited to breathe again. As the month continues, allow yourself to stay inside this mercy without rushing ahead. Do not pressure yourself to transform overnight. Do not demand from yourself what Allah is not demanding from you. Let the gentleness do its work. Let the consistency soothe you. Let the silence speak. And when you reach moments where the heaviness returns, remember this feeling. Remember that Allah welcomed you when you were tired. Remember that you were allowed to arrive incomplete. Remember that mercy met you before you fixed anything. Ramadan is not a battlefield where you fight your soul into obedience. It is a guided path where effort is met with mercy and intention matters more than intensity. You still walk, you still strive, you still reach, but you are not doing it alone. Allah walks you through this month gently, teaching the heart how to obey without breaking itself in the process. And even after the last fast is broken, even after the familiar rhythms shift again, the door that opened for you does not disappear. The hug does not vanish. It becomes something you carry inside you, something you return to when life begins to weigh heavily again. Because the soul that almost gave up is not weak, it is resilient. And Ramadan did not come to test that resilience, it came to heal it. So if you find yourself listening to this while tired, while unsure, while quietly holding on, know that this reminder was meant for you. Not to push you forward, but to sit with you where you are, to remind you that Allah's mercy does not rush. It remains. And when you are ready, even if readiness feels small, you will find that He is still there, exactly as He was when you first arrived, arms open, saying without words, "You can come in now." O Allah, wrap our hearts in your mercy, soften what has grown tired inside us, draw us close without burden, and grant our souls rest, nearness, and gentle ease now and always.